The first time Xander Shore saw an alien, he was in his backyard, barefoot, holding a squeaky tennis ball covered in drool. His golden retriever, Bongo, bounced in place, tail wagging like a windshield wiper stuck on high. It was 7:30 in the evening, and the sky above his small Colorado home had gone from pink to bruised purple. That's when the ship appeared. It was silent, no dramatic rumbling or tractor beams, just a matte black oval the size of a football field that drifted down behind the tree line like a soap bubble sinking in slow motion. Xander didn't scream. He didn't run. He just blinked twice, looked at Bongo, and said, "You seeing this too, buddy?" Bongo barked once, then dropped his front legs in place stance. The ship settled into the edge of the woods. A hatch unsealed with a low hiss and a ramp extended onto the grass. A figure descended tall, slender, with limbs that bent just enough to make a person uncomfortable. Its skin was a soft, sea glass green, and it had 4 eyes positioned in a way that made direct eye contact impossible. Xander dropped the tennis ball. The alien stopped a few feet from him and said, "Greetings. I am Vireel of the Alari Consulate. You are Xander Shore, human?" Xander raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, that's me." "You guys really just show up in people's yards. We triangulated your residential coordinates based on your interstellar language submission to the Orion Linguistic Exchange. You uploaded a video of your pet saying I love you." Xander blinked. "Wait, you mean the video of Bongo? That went viral like 2 years ago." "Yes, it triggered multiple diplomatic alerts." Bongo barked again, this time more insistently. Vireel looked down and took a cautious step back. "What is that?" the alien asked. "That's Bongo, he's a dog." Vireel's hand twitched. "A subordinate species," Xander frowned. "What? No, he's a pet. You live together." "Yeah, you permit it to reside in your dwelling, of course. And it communicates?" "Well, not like full sentences or anything. He knows a few words, picks up on tone, body language." Vireel turned slowly and tapped a small device on his wrist. A shimmering blue field erupted around the entire property. Xander didn't notice until the air shimmered slightly, like heat over asphalt. "Hey, what's that?" Quarantine protocol initiated. "Quarantine. For what?" "You are harboring a non-sentient species capable of partial mimicry and emotional feedback loops. That implies potential bio-behavioral infection vectors. This must be studied. No one enters or exits this perimeter until cleared." Bongo sat, tilted his head, then sneezed. Xander raised both hands. Whoa, you can't just lock me in my yard because I own a dog." "I can," Vireel said. "And I have." That was how the United States government learned aliens had arrived, because a man and his golden retriever had been locked inside a shimmering dome in suburban Colorado. Within hours, the yard was surrounded by federal vehicles, a mobile command post, and a very confused mayor. Inside the dome, Xander tried reasoning with Vireel over a cup of lukewarm coffee. "Look, pets are normal on Earth. We've had them for thousands of years. Cats, dogs, birds. Some people keep snakes." Vireel's 4 eyes blinked out of sync. "You voluntarily cohabitate with reptiles." "Some people do, yeah." Vireel tapped his wrist again. The dome extended another 50 feet. "All right, what's the actual problem here?" Xander asked. Vireel pulled a small projector from his belt and activated it. A hologram flared to life, showing a series of charts and images. "This is a model of interspecies emotional imprinting. It is dangerous. The dominant species yourself forms neurological attachments to the subordinate. This creates a feedback loop that warps both parties' behavior. Prolonged exposure can lead to irrational risk-taking, altered sleep patterns, and long-term psychological dependence." Xander crossed his arms. "Are you saying loving my dog is a health hazard?" "I am saying it is a planetary-level biocultural anomaly. You don't just live with these creatures. You mourn them, you celebrate their birthdays, some of you dress them in clothing." "Okay, that last part is weird, I'll admit." Vireel turned to Bongo, who was now chewing a sock he'd found somewhere in the grass. This creature does not understand the concept of clothing. Yet it destroys, mimics, and integrates into your domestic structure. It is both dependent and manipulative. Xander rubbed his temples. You think pets are manipulating us? Vireel nodded slowly. They have colonized your emotional infrastructure. Over the next few days, the dome held. Xander was allowed food drops and brief medical checks, but no one else could enter. Bongo was examined from a distance, scanned repeatedly, and once even offered a glowing cube of compressed nutritional matter, which he promptly buried near the bird bath. News spread. The term pet quarantine incident trended worldwide. Other aliens began arriving, each more alarmed than the last. The Alari weren't the only species concerned. The Thalassians, who had no concept of non-utilitarian lifeforms, were appalled. The Grelak delegation compared the human-pet bond to a form of symbiotic entrapment. A week into the quarantine, Vireel returned with a small team of bioethicists. "We have reviewed your Earth's history," he said. "You domesticated wolves into dogs. You bred them for traits like loyalty, cuteness, and obedience." "Well, yeah," Xander said, "that's kind of the point. Do you not see the ethical implications? You modified an entire species for emotional gratification." Xander sighed. "We also gave them a better life, shelter, food, medicine." "It's mutual. Mutual implies consent. Did the wolves sign an agreement?" "They were wolves, man. They couldn't hold pens." Vireel's team murmured among themselves in their native tongue, which sounded like glass being stirred with a spoon. Bongo rolled onto his back and snored. 2 days later, a temporary tribunal was set up. Xander was asked to testify. He stood in a plastic chair under a canvas tent, facing 5 alien delegates and a translator drone. His leg hurt from where he'd tripped over a solar panel cord earlier, nothing broken, but the doctor said to keep pressure off it for a few days. "Explain to us," one of the delegates said, "why humans persist in this practice." Xander took a breath. "Because it works. Pets keep us grounded. They teach responsibility, empathy, patience. They're not tools or machines, they're companions. We don't love them because they're useful. We love them because they love us back." A pause. Then the Grelak delegate asked, "What happens when they die?" Xander hesitated. "We grieve. Sometimes for a long time, and you willingly enter this cycle of emotional pain." "Yeah." "Why?" Xander looked over at Bongo, who was now licking the side of a folding chair. "Because the joy's worth the hurt." The tribunal recessed for deliberation. Xander limped back to his lawn chair and sat with a wince. By day 12, the quarantine dome had expanded again. Several more humans were caught in the widening circle, including a woman named Zora Telling who owned 3 cats and a parrot that cursed in Spanish. She was furious. "They're treating us like we're infected," she muttered. "All because we like animals," Xander nodded. "They're trying to understand, it's just alien to them." No one laughed. That night the dome shimmered and briefly went opaque. Strange lights pulsed above the tree line and a low hum rattled windows. Bongo barked until his voice went hoarse. When the lights faded, Vireel returned alone. His skin had shifted to a more muted hue, a sign of stress, apparently. "We have reached a decision," he said. "You and your companion are to be transported to an observation facility, permanently." Xander stood. "Wait, what? You're taking me?" "Your bond has been deemed a high-risk case of cross-species emotional entanglement." Zora stepped forward. "This is absurd. He's not hurting anyone." "It is not about harm. It is about containment." Xander's heart pounded. "You can't just abduct people." "I can," Vireel said. "And I have." Before Xander could react, a pulse of energy hit his chest. He collapsed, legs folding awkwardly beneath him. Bongo lunged, barking furiously, but another pulse stopped him mid-leap. He yelped and hit the ground. As darkness closed in, Xander saw Vireel's shape looming overhead, and then nothing. Xander came to strap to a padded recliner, the kind you find in old dental offices or dystopian spas. A soft hum filled the room, and the air smelled faintly of crushed mint and metal. His arms were restrained with flexible bands, warm to the touch. pulsing ever so slightly like they were alive. The light was indirect, coming from the walls themselves, and the ceiling displayed a slow swirl of nebulas that changed color every few seconds. He tried to lift his head but immediately regretted it. There was a dull ache behind his eyes, like he'd overused a VR headset for too long. He blinked against the haze settling over his thoughts. Something cold clinked against his wrist. I would advise against sudden movement. Your vestibular system is still recalibrating. The voice came from the left. Xander turned his head slowly and saw a figure standing by a curved console. The alien was short and wide with a translucent dome over its face. It wore a dark blue garment with dozens of tiny loops stitched into the fabric, each loop glowing faintly. "I wasn't planning a cartwheel," Xander mumbled. "Where am I?" "You are in Transit Bay 8 aboard the Alari vessel Vostron, currently in low orbit above your planet." "Where's Bongo?" Contained separately. "He is being evaluated for cognitive patterning and neural consistency." Xander groaned. "He eats socks." "He's not going to pass any of your tests." "That is precisely why we're concerned." The alien moved toward him and held up a thin wand-like instrument. It emitted a rapid series of beeps as it passed over Xander's chest and stomach. The device clicked, then displayed a set of readouts in a language that looked like someone had spilled ink in a straight line. "Your cardiovascular rhythm is within acceptable variance. Cortisol levels elevated. No cranial hemorrhaging." "Well, that's a relief. You were stunned with a level 3 neural dispersal field. Mild disorientation is typical. Some humans experience temporary aphasia or involuntary emotional recall. Have you noticed any intrusive memories?" Xander frowned. "Are you asking if I'm suddenly reliving awkward high school moments?" "That is one documented variant, yes." "No, but now I'm thinking about them." The alien made a note on a flat crystal sheet. Its fingers were long and webbed, with small metallic nodules embedded at every knuckle. The room vibrated gently as a new set of vents opened in the ceiling, dispersing a mist that smelled faintly like lemon and ozone. "I'm Xander, by the way," he said. "I am called Telvin. I specialize in sapient anomalous interaction protocols." "That's a long way of saying I deal with weirdos, isn't it?" Telvin looked at him evenly. "Your species has demonstrated behavioral anomalies across multiple domains. Your relationship with non-sapient life is among the most destabilizing. Because we like animals. Because you create emotional dependencies with them that override self-interest. You risk your lives for them. In some cases, you initiate legal proceedings on their behalf. Right, cause they're part of the family." Telvin made another note. "That phrase has come up repeatedly. It lacks logical consistency." "Families aren't logical." "That's kind of the point." The recliner hissed softly and the restraints loosened. Xander sat up slowly, rubbing his wrists. His head still throbbed, but the fog was thinning. "Can I see Bongo in time? First, you must answer a series of compatibility assessments. These will determine whether your current neurological state has been compromised." "You think my brain's been hijacked by a dog?" "No. We believe it is possible your species has undergone a slow cultural reprogramming initiated by domesticated fauna. The cumulative effect is indistinguishable from indoctrination." Xander stood, though his knees protested. "You think we got brainwashed by our own pets?" Telvin turned toward the console. "Not intentionally, but the pattern is consistent with self-reinforcing cognitive loops. You assign language to their behavior. You interpret random actions as affection. The result is a feedback system immune to logic correction. Or maybe they just love us back. That conclusion lacks falsifiability." Xander walked toward the wall, which shimmered and became transparent, revealing a curved corridor lined with panels that blinked in subtle patterns. A few aliens passed by, their forms varied, some tall and insectoid, others gelatinous with sensor orbs floating in orbit around their bodies. None of them looked at him. He turned to Telvin. "You ever had a pet?" "I've studied them." "That's not the same." Telvin considered this. My species once domesticated the Varnath. They were used for aquatic navigation and stress regulation. What happened? They began mimicking our vocalizations. Entire generations refused to mature beyond larval communication cycles. We discontinued the practice. Let me guess, too risky? Too expensive. A chime sounded overhead. Telvin tapped the console and the wall to the right slid open with a low sigh. A corridor extended beyond, bathed in pale green light. You will proceed to neurological patterning. Do I get breakfast first? Your digestive cycle was stabilized during sedation. Nutrients were administered intravenously, Xander grimaced. I hate when people feed me without asking. Noted, they walked in silence. The corridor curved gently, and the walls displayed flickering images charts, diagrams, and what looked like security footage from various Earth habitats. One screen showed a child hugging a goat. Another showed a man rescuing a trapped raccoon from a storm drain. Xander stopped. You're spying on us. We are observing anomalous behavior. Saving an animal is anomalous. When it involves personal risk, yes, that is rare among advanced species. He watched the goat screen flicker. So what's the end game here? You gonna study me for a few months, then let me go? If your condition proves stable, repatriation may be considered. If not, relocation to a neutral research habitat will be recommended. I'm not a lab rat. No. You are a cultural contagion vector. They turned another corner, entering a chamber filled with concentric rings of machinery. A chair waited in the center, surrounded by translucent panels displaying rotating brain scans. A technician floated nearby, literally floated its body suspended in a bubble of gas. It had no limbs, only a cluster of tendrils that moved like seaweed in a tide pool. Telvin gestured. Please sit. The scan will take approximately 8 minutes. Xander hesitated. What happens if you find something you don't like? We don't operate on like or dislike. We operate on deviation thresholds. If you exceed them, further containment will be required. Xander sat, the chair adjusting to his weight automatically. A soft tone played and the panels closed around him. Inside the cocoon, light danced across his field of vision. He felt warmth across his scalp, then a cold rippled down his spine. Memories flickered: birthday mornings, soccer games, a snowy night when he'd carried Bongo home in his coat after the dog had slipped on ice. A voice echoed faintly in his ear, though no one was there. What would you give up to keep him safe? Xander didn't answer. He didn't need to. The scan ended with a low chime. The panels retracted and he blinked against the sudden brightness. Telvin was already reviewing the results, several of his nodules blinking in rapid sync. Your emotional centers are hyper-engaged. Oxytocin saturation is elevated. Your empathy response is atypically strong even for a human. I always tip 20%, Xander said. Sometimes 25%. You are aware that such behavior, when scaled, can destabilize entire planetary economies. I'm not planning to tip the galaxy. This is not a joke. I wasn't joking. Telvin stared at him for a long moment, then turned to the technician. Initiate Phase 2. We need to test his response to separation stimuli. A door opened behind the main console. Bongo entered. His leash trailed behind him, and his eyes were wide with confusion. He sniffed the air, then spotted Xander and bounded toward him. Xander dropped to one knee just in time to catch him. The technician floated closer. Telvin didn't intervene. Now, Telvin said, we see if the bond can be interrupted. Xander looked up. What do you mean interrupted? The walls shifted. A soft tone played and a panel extended from the floor, displaying a raised platform with a glowing circle at its center. Place the animal in the containment ring. No, it is necessary. Xander stood, holding Bongo close. You want to see how I react if I lose him? Telvin said nothing. I already know the answer, Xander said. I'd do everything I could to get him back. That is the anomaly. No, Xander said. That's humanity. The platform's glow faded to a soft pulse, waiting. Bongo sat at Xander's feet, tongue lolling, entirely unaware he was the subject of a galactic ethics experiment. Xander stayed rooted, arms crossed, jaw clenched so tightly his molars ached. Telvin stepped forward, folding his hands behind his back. You are not being asked to sever the connection. Only to comply with a procedure designed to observe responses under non-threatening conditions. Does it involve putting him in a glowing circle like he's a malfunctioning toaster? The platform measures neural echo fields. It is non-invasive. He's a dog. He won't understand what's happening. He'll think I'm abandoning him, Xander said. That's not non-invasive. He is not capable of projecting abandonment. He lacks future-based emotional processing. Xander pointed at Bongo, who had flopped onto his side and was gently pawing at Xander's boot. That not look like future-based emotional processing to you? Telvin tilted his head, then turned to the technician. Has the specimen displayed anticipatory distress during previous isolations? The technician's tendrils curled slightly. Yes, elevated respiration, pacing, vocalization. Attempted breach of containment. Telvin's gaze returned to Xander. That contradicts our cognitive model. Maybe your model's wrong, Xander said. Maybe you're trying to dissect something that only makes sense when you feel it. Emotion is not immune to analysis. You keep treating it like a malfunction. What if this, he gestured between himself and Bongo, is the system working? Telvin studied him in silence, then turned to the floating technician. Recalibrate the scan parameters. Include dyadic synchrony metrics. The technician emitted a low tone and adjusted the control interface with a flick of its outer filaments. The platform dimmed further. Xander crouched beside Bongo, resting a hand on his back. You're not putting him in there alone. That would contaminate the readings, Telvin said. So you want to know how the bond works? Fine, measure both of us, that's the bond. Telvin didn't respond right away. One of his nodules blinked rapidly, then paused. Agreed. You will both stand within the scan field. Together, Xander confirmed. The platform brightened, the color shifting to a muted teal. Xander led Bongo by the collar, stepping onto the surface. It was warm underfoot, slightly springy. Bongo sniffed it, then sat obediently. The light intensified. A faint vibration passed through the floor and up Xander's legs. Panels around the chamber shimmered, displaying a moving lattice of brainwave patterns, two distinct structures pulsing in tandem, with intermittent overlaps. One was larger and more erratic Xander's. The other was steadier, simpler but reactive Bongo's, synchronization above baseline, the technician reported. Telvin leaned closer to a panel. There is mirroring in the cortical limbic interface. Xander glanced at the display. Translation. Your emotional responses are being echoed in the animal's neural activity in real time. Bongo burped faintly and curled into a ball. Yeah, that tracks, Xander said. We spend a lot of time together. He scratched behind Bongo's ear. The dog sighed contentedly. On the panel, a ripple of color passed through both patterns simultaneously. That's called trust, Xander said. You can't program it, you build it second by second. Telvin remained quiet. The technician floated back, retracting the scan field. The glow faded. The chamber dimmed to its baseline lighting. Test complete, Telvin said. Xander stepped off the platform and waited, watching Telvin's face for any hint of whatever decision was forming. What now? You gonna tell me I'm too emotionally codependent to be let back on Earth? No, Telvin said. You are being released, Xander blinked. What? The data is complete. The phenomenon has been sufficiently characterized. You will be returned to your dwelling within the hour. Bongo barked once, as if in agreement. That's it, Telvin nodded. Your case has demonstrated that the human-pet bond is not a pathological deviation. It is a culturally embedded adaptive strategy. Xander raised an eyebrow. So we're not contagious, not in the infectious sense. What sense, then? Telvin's eyes narrowed slightly. There is a risk of ideological diffusion if other species are exposed to your model, but containment is not a sustainable solution. So you're Letting us go because you're afraid we're too convincing. Your behavior may cause disruption in societies that lack emotional redundancy. But suppressing it would be an act of intellectual dishonesty. Xander let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Well, good to know honesty still counts for something out here. Your departure will be monitored. There may be follow-up evaluations. Do I get a souvenir? He gestured around. Maybe one of those glowy panels. Telvin didn't respond. 47 minutes later, Xander stood again in his backyard. The grass was damp. The air smelled like it might rain. The dome was gone. The woods looked ordinary again. Bongo trotted a few feet ahead, chasing a squirrel that vanished into the underbrush. Xander watched him go, then rubbed his temples. A black SUV pulled up to the curb. A man in a beige windbreaker stepped out. He had the exhausted look of someone who'd been explaining the same thing to different people all week. "You Xander Shore, that's me. Agent Walker, Department of Civil Anomalies, just here to confirm you're back and not glowing, not any more than usual." Walker flipped through a tablet. "You've been medically cleared, no residual implants or foreign markers, you're free to resume normal life." "That include dog parks?" Walker looked up. "It includes everything, though we'd appreciate it if you didn't post about this on social media." "Right. Because that worked so well with the last viral video." Walker's mouth twitched. "We'll be in touch if anything else comes up." The SUV pulled away. By late afternoon, the neighborhood returned to its usual rhythm: kids on bikes, someone mowing a lawn 2 houses down, a hawk circling overhead. Xander sat on the porch steps, a bowl of water beside him for Bongo, who had somehow found a stick longer than Xander was tall. He watched the dog wrestle with it, growling in mock battle, tail wagging like a metronome. "You got scanned by aliens today," Xander said. "And you're still more interested in a chunk of tree." Bongo barked once and ran in a circle. Xander leaned back against the railing. His legs still ached from the fall, but the swelling had gone down. He'd refused painkillers during the post-return checkup. The nurse hadn't argued. A few houses away, Zora Telling emerged onto her porch, holding her parrot on one arm. The bird let out a string of Spanish expletives and then sang the first half of a pop song. Xander waved. Zora raised her soda can in salute. Normal, it seemed, was back. 2 days later, a package arrived with no return address. Inside was a single card made of metallic paper. It read, Bond observed, "Anomaly understood, continue." No signature. Just a faint watermark of interlocking circles like ripples from 2 stones dropped in a still pond. Xander pinned it to the fridge next to Bongo's vaccination schedule. That night, he took the dog for a walk under a sky clearer than he'd ever seen it. Somewhere up there, aliens had decided not to interfere. Not because they weren't capable, but because, for once, they'd chosen to learn something instead. Bongo stopped to sniff a fire hydrant. Xander waited, hands in his pockets. Sometimes, the universe didn't need saving. Sometimes, it just needed to sit still long enough to watch a man wait patiently for his dog. And sometimes, that was enough.